Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. What I'm about to share with you is not a teaching. Not because there's nothing to learn, but because I am not here to instruct you. I can here to awaken something that is already within you. This is not a lecture, a lesson, or your desire to learn, or your desire to understand something that you were already looking into. If you look, in the modern world, we are conditioned to believe that truth is something external, something passed down from an expert, a teacher, or a figure of authority. From childhood, we sit in classrooms where we're taught to memorize facts, recite answers, and trust that the person standing at the front of the room holds the key to knowledge. This structure, while useful for acquiring skills and information, creates a dangerous illusion that truth is something that can be transferred, delivered, or handed over without personal effort or inquiry. It trains us to seek truth outside ourselves. But truth is not a product of instruction. It does not live in the pages of a book or the lectures of a professor. It emerges from the depths of lived experience. It is revealed in silence, in stillness, in the aching moments of confusion, and the quiet realizations that arise without any formal guidance. While someone may point toward a truth or share a perspective that sparks something within us, the recognition of that truth is a personal act. It cannot be imposed, memorized, or mimicked. It must arise from a place that no teacher can access, the sacred interior of our own awareness. When we discover truth for ourselves, it carries a weight and depth that second-hand knowledge cannot replicate. 1,000 people can tell us that fire burns, but it is only when we place our hand near the flame that we truly know. In the same way, someone can speak endlessly about love, freedom, grief, our purpose. But unless we walk through those experiences ourselves, their meaning remains abstract. Personal discovery transforms theory into reality. It moves insight from the mind to the soul. It becomes part of us, not as something learned, but as something remembered and embodied. This is why genuine wisdom cannot be transmitted through teaching alone. A teacher can inspire, provoke, or challenge, but they cannot inject truth into another's mind. The role of any guide is not to instruct, but to illuminate, to offer a light by which others may see themselves more clearly. Discovery requires risk, courage, and patience. It is not the easy path of repetition, but the daring road of questioning. And once we begin walking it, we realize that the most powerful truths are not taught to us, they are discovered by us through the lens of our unique and irreplaceable lives. Throughout history, societies have been structured around figures of authority, individuals or institutions positioned as the ultimate sources of truth, from religious leaders and political figures to academic experts and even social influences today. There has always been a tendency to elevate certain voices above others, treating them as the gatekeepers of knowledge. This hierarchical model places the individual in a position of passive acceptance, encouraged to believe without question, to follow without reflection and to conform without understanding. The system relies on obedience, not insight, on trust in the teacher, not trust in oneself. But when we allow ourselves to be governed by these traditional authorities, we often lose sight of our own capacity to discern and to know. Rejecting conventional authority does not mean disrespecting experience or ignoring wisdom. It means refusing to surrender our sovereignty of thought. It means recognizing that no matter how impressive someone's credentials or how charismatic their presence, they are still human. They see through their own filters, shaped by their own journeys, biases, and limitations. By challenging the dominance of external authority, we move from being passive, unlisting, compeish, analyte, and the need, and seek and safe istanbuli. There is a certain comfort in letting someone else define what is true. It relieves us of responsibility and offers the illusion of certainty. But truth that is borrowed, no matter how noble, remains fragile. The moment the source is questioned, the belief crumbles. When we depend solely on conventional authorities for our sense of right and wrong, for our perception of reality, we give away the very power that makes us human. Our ability to think critically, to feel deeply, and to choose freely. We must learn to listen, yes, but also to challenge, to interpret, and to test. That is where freedom begins. Rejecting conventional authority is not a rebellion for its own sake. It is a return to inner alignment. It invites us to examine what we've accepted without scrutiny and to separate inherited beliefs from lived truth. It teaches us to honor our inner compass, even when it points away from popular opinion. And in doing so, it opens the door to authentic insight. The voices of authority may still speak, but they no longer define us. We begin to see them not as rulers of thought, but as fellow travelers. Some ahead, some behind, but none above. In a world that often prioritizes theoretical knowledge, formal education, and second-hand information, we tend to forget that real understanding emerges from experience. While books, lectures, and teachings offer valuable frameworks, they can only take us so far. They can outline the landscape, but they cannot walk the terrain for us. It is through direct engagement with life, its trials, joys, contradictions, and questions, that we begin to develop authentic insight. What we live through touches us in a way that abstract knowledge cannot. Experience cuts through illusion and speaks to us with a clarity that no amount of explanation can match. We can be told 1,000 times what love means, how grief feels, or what courage looks like, but until we face these moments ourselves, the concepts remain incomplete. It doesn't provide neat answers. It breaks us open, confronts us with reality, and demands that we respond not from theory, but from the core of our being. It teaches through immersion, not instruction. And this makes its lessons both unforgettable and deeply personal. Moreover, experience honors individuality. What is meaningful or awakening to one person might be meaningless to another. Each of us moves through life differently, encountering unique circumstances that become the raw material for our growth. While formal education tries to standardize what we know and how we learn, experience tailors itself to us. It meets us where we are and challenges us in precisely the ways we need to evolve. That's why the wisdom gained through lived experience carries a certain authenticity. It is rooted in truth that has been felt, tested, and earned, not simply absorbed or inherited. This understanding also empowers us to trust ourselves. When we recognize experience as the real teacher, we stop waiting for others to give us permission to know. We begin to listen more deeply to what life is showing us, to reflect on our journey not as a series of random events, but as a curriculum uniquely designed for our awakening. Each heartbreak, success, failure, and breakthrough becomes a lesson not to be feared or dismissed, but to be embraced. In this way, we move from being passive consumers of knowledge to being active participants in our own unfolding. Footnote: geography, data, or advice. There is too much addicted, or Jimmy did. This is too much addicted, or Jimmy did. There is too much addicted and seen. Modern education often emphasizes learning as a process of acquiring new information, absorbing facts, memorizing concepts, and adding to what we already know. This idea suggests that we are not empty vessels, waiting to be filled. Knowledge and inner knowing. 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 From this perspective, the journey of growth is not about becoming something different, but about returning to what we already are, beneath the layers of conditioning and noise. From early childhood, we are shaped by external influences: family, culture, school, media, all of which impose narratives, expectations, and beliefs. Over time, we begin to forget the natural awareness we were born with. We forget how to trust our instincts, how to sit in silence, how to feel without shame, and how to perceive without judgment. The wisdom we once lived by, intuitively and effortlessly, becomes buried beneath the weight of societal programming. And so the process of awakening is not about learning something new. is not limited to any imposing. There is a gifting, an answer, ultimately, is not a fable. There is remembering in this sense is not about nostalgia or memory in the conventional way. It's a return to essence. It is the moment when we realize that the things we were seeking outside, peace, purpose, wholeness, have always lived within us. This realization often comes not through books or lectures, but through quiet moments of self-inquiry, spiritual insight, or emotional breakthrough. It feels less like discovery and more like recognition, as if a door that was always there finally opens, and when it does, there is often a sense of peace, not because we've achieved something new, but because we finally return home to ourselves. This concept invites a radical rethinking of the role of learning. Instead of seeing it as a path toward becoming more, we begin to see it as a path toward becoming less distracted, less conditioned, less afraid. In this letting go, we do not shrink, we expand. We begin to remember our inherent worth, our innate wisdom, and our deep connection to all that is. The mind may still crave facts and definitions. One of the most liberating aspects of truth is that it does not require belief, it only requires presence. A non-dogmatic approach embraces this freedom by rejecting rigid systems of thought and fixed ideologies that demand blind faith or conformity. In many traditions and institutions, teachings are presented as absolute, and questioning them is often discouraged or even punished. But truth, if it is truly universal and eternal, should withstand inquiry. It should invite exploration, not fear. A non-dogmatic approach encourages individuals to become thinkers rather than followers, seekers rather than repeaters, and explorers rather than imitators. It allows us to engage with ideas fluidly rather than being chained to them. This perspective reshapes the way we receive wisdom. Instead of accepting every word as sacred or final, we are invited to test it through the filter of our own lived experience. It becomes less about agreement and more about resonance, about feeling whether a teaching stirs something deep within us, whether it aligns with what we've seen and known in our own lives. It means listening with openness and humility, but also with discernment. A non-dogmatic approach doesn't dismiss all teachings. It simply refuses to put them on a pedestal where they cannot be questioned. It honors truth as something dynamic and living, not static and frozen. Such an approach also fosters dialogue instead of division. Dogma often leads to an us versus them mentality, where anyone outside the belief system is seen as lost, wrong, or dangerous. But when truth is not bound by ideology, there is room for diversity of thought and a deeper level of connection. We no longer feel the need to convert others to our view, nor do we see disagreement as a threat. This opens the door to meaningful conversations, where people can share perspectives, not to convince, but to understand and be understood. In this space, wisdom is not something one person holds over another. It is something revealed through honest, courageous exchange. Ultimately, a non-dogmatic path honors the mystery of life. It acknowledges that not everything can be explained, not everything needs to be categorized, and not all questions require immediate answers. It gives us the freedom to dwell in the unknown, to accept paradox, and to allow truth to evolve as we evolve. This flexibility does not weaken our insight, it strengthens it, because it is rooted in humility and lived experience. The path of non-dogma is not about rejecting all teachings, but about refusing to worship them. Then you just have to coming to anew in every moment. An egalitarian philosophy begins with the understanding that no one holds a monopoly on truth. In a world often obsessed with hierarchy, where some voices are elevated as supreme, while others are dismissed as unworthy, it becomes revolutionary to assert that we all have equal access to wisdom. The idea that teachers, gurus or experts should be placed on pedestals while others remain as passive followers is not only outdated but deeply disempowering. Egalitarianism invites us to look beyond titles, credentials, or authority figures and see that every person, regardless of their status, carries insight derived from their unique life experience. This shift challenges the traditional top-down model of learning and opens the door to a more inclusive and honest exploration of truth. Such a philosophy fosters mutual respect and shared humanity between speaker and listener. In the context of a non-hierarchical relationship, the person who shares insight does not do so from a place of superiority, but from companionship. Their intention is not to dominate or convince, but to connect and reflect. When the teacher does not place themselves above the student, both become co-creators in the exchange of ideas. This dynamic encourages listening that is not about obedience but about recognition. A listening that is alive, discerning, and participatory. We begin to realize that wisdom does not flow in one direction. It circulates, it moves, and it reveals itself in the presence of humility and openness. At its core, egalitarian philosophy also acknowledges the sacredness of each individual's inner voice. It tells us that what we know through our own direct experience is just as valid as what any authority might declare. This isn't to say that guidance from others is irrelevant. Rather, it is a reminder that external guidance should never silence the inner compass. Everyone walks their own path, shaped by their own lessons, their own timing, and their own inner growth. True egalitarianism honors that uniqueness without needing to compare or rank. It understands that wisdom is not a ladder to be climbed, but a horizon to be walked side by side, step by step, with equal dignity. When we embrace an egalitarian way of thinking, the very notion of student and teacher transforms. No longer fixed roles, they become fluid states that we all move through again and again. One moment we may be offering insight, the next we may be receiving it. The boundaries dissolve, and with them the power structures that often hinder deep connection. This philosophy reminds us that we are all both learning and remembering, teaching and being taught, evolving and supporting evolution. In that shared space, truth becomes not a possession, but a living dialogue, an unfolding conversation that belongs to everyone, not just a privileged few. There is a powerful difference between speaking truth and living truth. In today's world, it's easy to articulate wise words, quote revered philosophers, or repeat inspiring messages, but much harder to embody those words in our daily lives. The temptation to appear insightful often overshadows the effort to actually be truthful in our choices, our relationships, and our actions. We may speak eloquently about compassion, yet turn away from someone in need. We may preach about authenticity, yet wear masks to please others. Living truth requires a deeper level of integrity than saying it. It demands congruence between our inner convictions and our outer behaviors. Not just once, but consistently, especially when no one is watching. When truth is only spoken but not lived, it becomes hollow, a performance rather than a principle. People may be moved by beautiful words, but they are changed by sincere example. Words can spark curiosity, but it is how we carry ourselves, how we respond in difficult moments, and how we treat others that truly communicate what we believe. This is why some of the most powerful teachings come not from books or lectures, but from observing someone who quietly and honestly lives in alignment with their truth. These individuals may not say much, but their presence itself becomes a transmission of clarity, kindness, and integrity. Their lives speak louder than their voices ever could. Living truth also requires vulnerability. It's one thing to talk about courage, but it's another to act with courage when it's uncomfortable or risky. To live truthfully means we must face moments of uncertainty, take responsibility for our choices, and accept the consequences of standing by what we believe, even when it costs us approval, comfort, or belonging. It's a continuous process of shedding what is false, even if that means stepping into the unknown. This kind of authenticity is not always easy or glamorous, but it is deeply transformative. It calls us to go beyond surface level appearances and to live from a place of depth, conviction, and unwavering honesty. Ultimately, truth is not a performance to impress others. It is a path we walk with humility. It shows up not just in grand declarations, but in small, everyday moments. How we listen, how we speak, how we treat those who cannot offer us anything in return. Living truth means embodying what we value, even when it's inconvenient. It asks us to move beyond intellectual understanding and step into practice. And this way, truth is not something we talk about. It is something we become. Our lives become the message, and our example becomes the most sincere offering we can give to the world. So as we leave this space today, let us not cling to these words as doctrine or instruction. Let us not treat this moment as a lecture to remember, but as a mirror to reflect something deeper within ourselves. This is not a teaching, it is a gentle invitation to trust your own unfolding, to walk your own path with courage, and to honor your truth with integrity. You don't need to follow, imitate, or agree. You only need to listen to life, to your experience, and to the quiet wisdom that has always lived inside you. If anything here has sparked something real,